Welcome everybody to our AMA with XToken here in DeFi Raiders. I'm here with Julian and Ben from XToken. We'll be talking about their project and some of the new things that they have that they just launched. So with that, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah.
I'm Ben. I'm the growth lead at XToken. So I handle kind of like the marketing, business development, operations. We've spoken a couple times, relentless, and have been really enjoying myself in the DeFi Raiders community. So happy to be on.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here. So we'll launch into a couple of these questions real quick. You want to give a little bit of your background prior to launching XToken?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. I come primarily from a strategy consulting background, so about 10 plus years doing like marketing strategy engagements for Fortune 500 companies. Great experience, but somewhat boring, especially compared to Web3. So as I got more and more into crypto in 2019 and 2020, and especially 2021, I just knew I had to get a job in Web3. So got super into NFTs, super into ETH. Was always interested in like speculating on crypto, but once I was actually able to like do things on chain, it just made so much sense to me and fell immediately into like the NFT and DeFi rabbit holes. So started working with XToken in January of this year, and it was a really exciting time to be there because we were actually pivoting from kind of like our V1 to our V2. So XToken's actually been around the DeFi space on Ethereum and L2s for about 2 years. We originally did like native staking and liquidity strategies for different protocols. So we were kind of optimizing other trading pairs and protocols, and we found that we were doing a lot of we were building custom rewards contracts and all these custom contractual frameworks that, made a lot of sense to just build some infrastructure out of them. And that's really the vision for this V2 and our product called Terminal. So right around when I was brought in, we started having the designs for Terminal, and we call it like a permissionless investment bank. But really what it is it's a suite of applications that we're still building out. We've got one live, one launching next week. And all of our apps are entirely permissionless. And what they allow other projects to do in this space is there are a set of like financial primitives that basically every project in DeFi or NFTs needs to do. So that's bootstrap liquidity in some sense, through an NFT sale or a token offering, maintain on-chain liquidity. So if you want to be on Uniswap or other DEXs and be able to swap, you need to have pretty deep liquidity. So those are the two that we're focusing on. There are other primitives, of course, like different bonding mechanisms and different treasury things like, we're looking at native collateralization in the future and some other stuff that's a little bit down the road. But essentially the vision is just taking those financial primitives. Today, what people are doing is like basically they have to build custom contracts, they have to build front ends. A lot of times it's super outside of people's comfort zones. Like they don't have background in financial contract architecture. They have background in, developing like NFTs or storytelling or whatever it is. So we just want to provide really best-in-class architecture that people can hook right into. They require no code. They take less than 5 minutes to execute. And that's really the vision for XToken Terminal.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I mean, especially when you think about the market that we're in right now, right? People are trying to be deliberate with their funds, deliberate with the allocation of their funds, and we're always looking for cheap but quality. And I mean, this really allows them to take so much money out of having to pay a dev to, build all this, all this base layer structure, right, and really focus on intricacies of their protocol. And I think when you're able to take that money that you would normally pay a dev to build all this stuff for you and all that time, I mean, that just being able to allocate that extra percentage towards the things that you really think are make your protocol successful, I think is huge.
Yeah, it's definitely intended to save dev hours. I mean, those are like the most finite resource in this space. Keep people, focused on their kind of core competencies, but it's also about mitigating risk, because we've seen some just humongous contract blunders that have, resulted in massive loss of funds or massive security vulnerabilities. One example, and our NFT minter is not quite out yet. It's probably the next step on our horizon, but Akutars is a pretty good example. Super high profile NFT mint. They ended up selling out very quickly, but the success was short lived because there was a basic withdrawal function in their contract that meant they were not able to execute that function, and $30 million or something to that nature at the time was locked forever in the contract. Oof. And it's still sitting in there locked. So those are the kind of things that can really just destroy a project. And through our, open source audited contracts, we want to help projects not even have to worry about that.
Yeah, I mean just the security aspect of that right there that everybody talks about is, what auditing are you doing, blah, 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 blah. Everyone's concerned about a rug pull. I mean, when you take that out from the beginning, I mean, that eases people's minds for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I hadn't considered it I mean, for liquidity mining, there's definitely some user experience improvements to the traditional mining experience. But you're right, it probably does give, minters or token buyers a degree of confidence that this is a trusted contract and, there's nothing malicious going on. So that's a great point.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I thought about when I was looking at this was the money saved and then the security, because that's something we ask, in a significant number of our AMAs. What are you doing to ensure security? If a project can be like, oh, well, we're built on, XToken terminal, right? Then hopefully I know your goal is for that to, be a household name within the space, right? And, we're built on this, right? People aren't even going to ask any questions after that. Because then they can just go and check, oh, did they build off this? Yep, all right, good to go. So,
yeah,
that's
absolutely
definitely a huge selling point right there. So,
and you're exactly right. Just a quick comment. We do want to be a utility first and foremost. Everything's permissionless, trustless, so you can, anyone can use our platforms. We design them pretty much, primarily for other projects because that's the use case that makes the most sense. But when we talk about origination, there are plenty, whales can create kind of one-to-many, OTC markets. We've actually had projects deploy liquidity mining campaigns who we weren't even, there was some kind of Doge related token that deployed a few pools. So we think that's awesome because it's intended to be pretty much used by anyone, a utility. Yeah, you nailed it there.
Yeah, I'm happy to be able to give you another platform to get it out there. Just because, some of the conversations that we've seen throughout the space, I mean, I really think this has an opportunity once people understand what it is that you guys do to be that kind of household name there. So talk a little bit about, before because I do want to talk significantly about origination now that you guys are, in full swing with that. But one thing I want to cover is why did you use the Uniswap liquidity mining model? What was so appealing about that? And for people who are unaware of the Uniswap model, how does that work?
Yeah, for sure. I'll give a little bit of background there. So Mining is our first app and was really sort of the first use case that we thought made a ton of sense for this permissionless infrastructure type service. So we were working with a couple different projects to basically create like custom liquidity mining campaigns. So just to give, I could talk about this all day, but just to give a little bit of detail, Uni V3 is like a step function improvement to Uniswap V2. The biggest difference is this concept called concentrated liquidity. So essentially what it means is if you're, I'm sure you DeFi Raiders are all pretty familiar with this, but if you're in DeFi, you're providing your liquidity. One of the most important things is capital efficiency, right? Making sure that your dollars are getting the best possible returns that they can. So with V2 and kind of like the first, concept of a liquidity pool there, you basically, you need two sides in the liquidity pool, one of each token, and then that capital was spread from 0 to infinity. So it was just kind of spread linearly, and you're really only earning when trades are on the swap fees. You're really only earning when trades are executed in that range. So with V3, what Uniswap did is they basically allowed users to set their own concentrated liquidity ranges. So you can actually say, if you're doing an Ethereum optimism pair, you can set the specific range where you want to deploy your capital. And then when swaps are executed there, you earn quite a bit more. From Uniswap's own studies, it's about I think it was 54% or something more capital efficient than a Uniswap V2 pool. So that's really, really cool. But with the great power comes a ton of complexity as well. So on the project side, V2 contracts were relatively easy to just kind of fork and create your own. But V3 is a much more technical beast. And the catalyst for Terminal was really we had projects we were working with who were needed help creating custom contracts because they weren't Uniswap experts and it was just taking a ton of time. So that was the catalyst for the mining app. It's also pretty complex on the user side as well because you have to be knowledgeable about what range to provide liquidity in. If the tokens are moving, which in a volatile market like today, they're moving pretty frequently. You have to worry about redeploying your range. You have to create they're not even fungible tokens, these liquidity positions like they used to be. They're now NFTs. So there's a lot of friction. There's a lot of rub. And with our terminal mining app, it just makes it really easy because essentially what you're doing is the pool sponsor who's deploying this incentivized liquidity mining pair is just clicking a few parameters on our application. It's like a 4-step process. You're selecting the tokens you want. You're putting the token that you're going to pay out as incentives to liquidity providers. You're setting a range for the entire pool, and then you're deploying. And then users just deposit like they would. They don't have to create their own liquidity ranges. They just basically deposit ERC20s on top and earn linearly. So it's just a much easier process for users, for liquidity providers, and for projects as well. It saves a ton of development time.
Yeah, I agree. There's I've talked to a couple people who want to work, develop. For example, I know someone who wants to develop a DEX on another screen or another chain. And one of the people I was talking to about that, one of the devs that I'd reached out to, he was like, "Why don't you just fork Uniswap V2?" So definitely a simple but effective model that does provide a lot of simplicity.
No doubt, a lot of sort of side chains have been, continue to do that. So yeah. V3 isn't quite everywhere yet.
Yeah, not quite, but but it's getting out there, and it is definitely intriguing. I'm hoping to be able to talk to those guys at some point. So
yeah, that would be a good one.
Yeah, I know. Probably won't understand half of what they're saying, but I'll try. So, all right. So just a couple more kind of quick things on before we get into origination, which I think we want to spend kind of the bulk, and then some of the updates that you guys have rolled out here recently. Just for people who are looking to use your platform, the fees for the project, right? Since it is such a financially sound way for someone to launch a project, what are the post-launch fees that are associated with using your product?
Yeah, for sure. So on the user side, there are no fees. There are no deposit fees or withdrawal fees. You just deposit and earn. And the workflow is a little bit improved. So we haven't yet deployed a Zap function, but you don't need to create the liquidity and the LP token, approve that, all that stuff. You basically just can deposit into a pool. You need equal sides of each token, deposit that, and it's sort of like a one-click process there. So for the users, they really don't have to worry about fees. We do charge fees to the pool sponsor or to the one who deploys the liquidity incentives program. And that's really how we stay in business. So 100% of fees that we accrue go back to XTK holders through our own staking program. And the fees so origination will be a little bit different for mining. Essentially two fees. There's a flat deployment fee, which we think is really competitive with the market. It's a one-time fee of 0.2 ETH to deploy the contract. And then we also take 1% of the tokens that are distributed using our platform through the liquidity incentives.
Okay,
with origination, just to be competitive with the market, it's slightly different. So I'm not sure we've revealed the full details yet, but it's a little bit higher of a deployment fee, the flat ETH deployment fee, and a little bit lower percentage of the overall token sale.
Okay, cool. I mean, still significantly cheaper than some of the dev hours that are out there. So
yeah. Some competitors that are more like actively managed, are charging 2 or 3%. So we think it's pretty competitive and a pretty compelling business case compared to, like you said, development hours, auditing costs, and risk, which is a little harder to quantify.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, hey, we take a significant amount of risk out. We take a significant amount of your initial capital needed to launch the project out of the way, and then our fees are 50 to 66% less than competitors. I mean, those are three pretty solid selling points, if you ask me. So, okay, so let's talk about origination. It's got a ton of features. It's going to make lives of developers significantly easier. You want to tell us about that?
I'd love to. Yeah, so thinking, similar design philosophy. Really, we're looking for permissionlessness, for simplifying these financial contracts, DeFi primitives, all that good stuff. So origination is really, probably the most likely use case is going to be token offerings. So a project selling their tokens. But we're really thinking of it as more of like an end-to-end financing platform. And let me explain what that means. We're actually starting next week. We're going to be launching a series of blog posts and Twitter threads that just explain some of these different use cases. Because at a glance, it's like a token offering platform, which is super cool. I'm not sure there are any entirely permissionless ones to date. Have to fact check that, but it can do a whole lot more. So I'll just give a kind of an overview of like 4 of probably the premier use cases for this thing. So token offerings probably be the most popular, and it's the same kind of just a couple click process, no code required, and there's a lot of customization options. So you can do a public or allow list or a combination of the two. Sale, you just upload a CSV with basically the allow listed contract addresses and the amount that they can purchase, and we handle all the Merkleization and everything like that. So just upload that. You can add vesting and cliff periods. to the offering sale, and it's a super smooth like 4-step process. The second major one is Olympus Pro style bonding. So this was a super popular narrative last year with protocol owned liquidity. Basically what a project could do, so if they already have a token in circulation, but they want to buy back some of their own liquidity, they could essentially sell a token in exchange for some LP tokens at a fixed rate or at an ascending or descending amount. So you can be getting more tokens out to market, but accepting, buying back your own liquidity. So it's just another kind of spin on a token offer, except instead of accepting USDC or ETH or something, you're accepting LP tokens, which we think is really cool, but it's a slight difference is it's a whole new use case. Can also do, we think of it as kind of like a on-chain Kickstarter for crowdfunding. So it's, a lot lower fee than like Web2 services. You can just kind of we wanted to make it inexpensive enough that an individual or a small team could kind of use this as a Kickstarter alternative, a Web3 way of bootstrapping liquidity for a project idea without being an established official full launch tokenomics thing. The fourth one, and then we'll kind of see what questions you have, is one-to-many OTC. So say you're a whale and you want to create your own market. You've got some assets that are relatively low liquidity. You could set the fixed ratio and offer to buy, X number of tokens for Y other token. So you can kind of create your own markets, which is pretty neat. And projects could even use this same mechanism to buy back tokens, like a repurchasing plan. So the use cases will go in a lot more detail, and we'll have visuals and kind of case studies and instructions for how to use it. But those are some of the really cool things that we can do that are a little bit beyond the scope of just sell token. One more thing, and then we'll jump into questions. So this platform is just about ready to go. So it's been much anticipated in the community. We've been working on it for a while now, and contracts are ready to go. So we're looking to launch sometime next week. We're nailing down a date with our first launch partner, Amplify. Amplify has been incubated by CreatorDAO. CreatorDAO is a kind of a community of content creators, and Amplify is an on-chain affiliate marketing platform, which is pretty neat. And we're actually thinking of using them for our token sales. So the way that it would work is a project does a token sale and then build in an on-chain referral mechanic. So you could, if you want to buy some tokens, you can tell your friends about it and you can earn a little bit of a kickback. So just being able to track that on chain within the actual sale itself, we think is really cool, and we're really excited about Amplify.
Yeah, I actually just listened to an AMA with them on hunting for alpha on Spotify.
Nice.
And I think that is definitely a big thing going forward. Actually, one of the guys Axelrod here in the audience and I have had multiple conversations about that, about being able to actually track not just by clicks, but who actually invests in a project, and looking at going into the next bull market, right, is how are the referrals going to work, and I think that's going to be a huge aspect of things in general.
So we're seeing it with the new .ether domain names have a built-in on-chain referral system, and it just makes so much sense for Web3, kind of spreading that wealth in a way that's totally transparent and trackable. I think it's an awesome idea.
Yeah, 100%. And it gives so many users an opportunity to make money, right? And we'll see. Right, one thing I'm interested in is, for example, I'm in this this one kind of forex fund, right? And I can get referrals up to like 10 levels, right? So I'm interested to see how far, projects are willing to push that, right? Like what percentage of that breakdown, how far can people push this link and their own customer referral links, and what levels can they make money to? Because I mean, that's going to become a competitive side of that, is who can provide the most money through referrals, right? And
Yep.
then you have an opportunity, when you start to think about it, it's like, okay, well, if I'm worried about impermanent loss from a token, like, is the referral system able to offset some of that, you know what I mean, and continue to bring revenue in the next bear market per se? So, I mean, it's very intriguing to think about, and how that's going to be implemented and to what level. So, yeah, I'm interested in Amplified DAO as well. Been looking into them because I think they kind of cornered that market pretty quickly with what looks like a pretty solid project or product. So
Yeah, no doubt. And I'll just share a little bit of info about their sales. So their AGG token will be going live with XToken terminal. Should be sometime next week. I don't have all the exact like cost details, but there is a blog post that we jointly published that I can share with you after the fact. But they'll be doing, so they'll be the first to use our platform for a token offering. There will be an allow list sale and a public sale. Allow list first, obviously, and at a discount. And all holders of XTK, which is the XToken governance token, will be allow listed. So super excited for that.
yeah, that's pretty cool. Everybody buy. Just kidding, not financial. Okay, so one thing I want to ask about in terms of origination to terminal, just in general, is how do the NFTs fit into origination?
So yeah,
Or
we
do they
actually
not really?
not really for
Okay.
this one. NFTs, we're thinking about an NFT minter app next, which would be very similar to origination, except with non-fungible tokens instead of fungible. So it would help with the financial contract side of NFT mints. You could do the same kind of like OTC market making. For now, though, it's for this, it's only ERC20s that it accepts.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I saw it in the, when reading through the white paper, and obviously we didn't, get talk a ton about origination last time. I just during the, in the drop down, it's, talk about your cliff investing period. So I just wanted to make sure that if anyone goes to read through the white paper, that, we can clarify that, those are two separate entities there.
Yep. Yeah, it's possible that we, enable like non-fungible assets on our origination platform if somebody wanted to use it to sell NFTs or receive NFTs. But for now, it's just ERC20s, and we do think there's a ton of potential with, just making sort of the buying and selling of NFTs easier, though. So definitely something we're keeping an eye on for the next.
Yeah, I think that's smart. I mean, especially with just, the appeal that the general public, you want to talk to them about, quote unquote crypto in general. Everyone's like, oh, NFTs. And I'm like, well, it goes a lot further than that. But I think, that's definitely a corner that is being, starting to take more focus as well. I mean, just with the ever expanding utilities that are coming there.
And DeFi and NFTs are, with Uniswap V3 liquidity positions, those are NFTs as well. So, there's definitely some potential for being able to exchange like liquidity positions for fungible assets. So something we're exploring for sure.
Nice. So, so I don't actually have a ton of follow-on questions for origination itself. I mean, I think it is a very kind of to the point product. It makes a lot of sense just from the overview. Go in here, deploy your project, and just from the four things that you talked about. I think that kind of explains any of the questions that I could have outside of just the ERC20. So what are your plans for eventually expanding outside of ERC?
Nothing concrete there. was just thinking that there's definitely some potential to, probably like for Uniswap V3 concentrated liquidity positions would be the, sort of non-ERC20 token asset that would make sense. Like for a bonding use case, for example, if someone wanted to buy back V3 liquidity positions in exchange for a token, that would probably make the most sense for other token standards for origination. Of course, unless there are like new standards that are created or whatever. But for right now, for origination, it's a ERC20 exchange financing platform.
Okay, cool.
Happy to hear that it's straightforward as well. It's a very like there's a lot of use cases. It's super configurable, and it's been difficult to really like kind of just distill what exactly it can do into a few words or visuals or use cases. So happy to hear that you're tracking with it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously there's going to be intricacies as people start to use it, right? But I think the overall, not necessarily broad concept, right? But just the overall concept is pretty easy to understand. And I mean, especially, you're tailoring this towards people who are trying to launch projects, right? So devs already have like a kind of an understanding of what they would need to do if they were doing it on their own. And then, navigating, through the app or whatever it doesn't seem, and from what you're showing us on the video, and then obviously you'll have the slide deck that we'll be able to publish as well. I think it's complex, but it's also very simple at the same time. At least I think so. So.
That's the goal.
Yeah. I mean, ease of use, especially in an environment so complex as DeFi. So.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so you had mentioned earlier that you have some other things that you guys are working on, or other new features that are out. You want to dive into a little bit of those if we haven't covered them?
Yeah, for sure. So NFT Minter would be most likely the next application that we work on. Once we get origination out the door, we're going to work on some improvements of the existing platforms, just making sure we're listening to customer feedback. We're making the user experience as friendly as possible through optimizations. We are releasing a utility for mining that we think is really exciting. So right now, the pool sponsor will deploy with a price range, the concentrated liquidity range, and then if it moves out of liquidity, if it moves out of that range, basically they would need to like redeploy a new contract and ask their users to follow along. So it can be like kind of a nuisance. There are some gas costs associated with, and it's just not as optimal as it could be. So we're developing a utility that basically allows for on-chain rebalancing. So if you have a secondary liquidity source to pull from, you can do sort of an atomic swap. So in one transaction, you swap, change the price range, and this will allow a project to basically reset the range of the existing terminal pool without requiring liquidity providers to like withdraw and then move their liquidity. So we think there's a ton of potential. It's not going to be right for every project because, as I mentioned, it requires a secondary liquidity source, whether that's like another pool on Uniswap or it's Curve pool or Bancor or whatever. But for like larger projects with deeper liquidity who are trying to take advantage of the capital efficiency of V3 with a tightly bound range, it's going to be a super nice feature. So that's really the big thing to look out for. You can check out our roadmap. In addition to Minter, we're also looking at some other kind of treasury management solutions. Don't have those like super well defined yet. We want to make sure that our first two apps are in kind of the best place they can be before we go developing a third one.
Yeah, totally fair. Are you able to talk any about what your plans for the native collateral at all?
That will be like borrowing against your native token and doing it in a way that doesn't require price oracles. I'd have to tap into the founder's brain to really lay the foundation for that application. But that was a pretty like novel idea that he had. I can't claim to understand it well enough just yet, but definitely stay tuned. Follow our Twitter, and we'll be talking more about liquidity auctioning and native collat in the future.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear about that, especially like with the no need for price oracle, right? So I saw something in one of the servers I was in talking about this app that was launching, and it didn't have a price oracle, and so they were manually updating prices and like all this stuff. And so it's like, well, one, that sounds like a recipe for disaster to me. But how that's going to be able to be achieved without a price oracle, I think will be. I'm intrigued to hear about that in the future once that comes out. So,
yeah, I know. Around the time that I came on board to the company, he had published sort of his vision for XToken terminal and like the 2.0, and talked a little bit more in depth about native collat and liquidity auctioning. So I'll definitely make sure you have the links to those. And as we get a little further along, that'll be something that would be great to have him on, on an AMA or something to talk about the future.
yeah, for sure. So one thing I kind of wanted to talk about, just to help give you guys like a little bit of a little oomph behind your messaging, is like you got a pretty impressive list of investors here, some well-known names. How were you able to get some of these guys on board, and what other investors or partnerships are you guys looking at as you go forward?
Thank you. In terms of investor partners, it was before my time, so I can't say for sure. I know our founder, Michael Cohen, has a background with the synthetics community. So, that's all sort of part of his network. We had done 2 prior rounds of raising. I'm not, probably like pre-seed, or I'm not even sure exactly how we would classify those rounds. So, yeah, that's to the best of my knowledge, that's sort of where those relationships were forged, and we're very grateful to have such a strong set of investors behind the project.
Yeah, I mean that definitely that gives you instant clout, So, and to be able to say, hey, we've worked on these projects, we're associated with these people, and they want to be associated with us. I mean, I think that is another form of security that people are starting to talk about as well. Is what did they do before, right? So,
yeah, absolutely.
And then so you're doing the partnership with Amplify DAO, or looking at the partnership with Amplify DAO. I want to be precise there from what you said earlier. But what other people are you looking at partnering it with, or marketing that you're looking to do, if you're able to talk about some of that?
Yeah, so Amplify is confirmed. They'll be our first launch partner for origination. We just need to nail down the date on their end that they'll be ready for the launch. So stay tuned. It should take place sometime next week. We use a very partnership heavy marketing approach. So just AMAs with as many folks as we can. Every project that we work with, we want to give them sort of the spotlight, share them with our community. There's also a lot of inherent cross-pollination with the way that the terminal apps are configured as well. Like if you go in and you join a mining pool, you're going to see all these other project pools as well. So that's as intended. So we want this to be like a hub where XToken community members can learn about other projects. So I would love to announce, an upcoming partnership. Nothing is finalized, can't quite announce it yet, but we are in talks with a number of projects, both for the mining and origination apps, that we think will be super exciting. And we're constantly looking for more, right? Because we are intending to be like a big utility on Ethereum and layer 2s, and we're permissionless, so any project can launch with us. So really that's my team's job, is just getting the word out, marketing, the value that we can provide, and partnering with anyone who needs us, which is as I mentioned, these primitives are things that like almost every project goes through.
Exciting. I'm excited to hear some of them. Yeah.
We've had some pretty cool partner projects so far. 100 Finance,
That's what I was about to ask
Pony,
about.
CedaDAO, and then Optimism is probably the biggest one. So definitely the most recent and probably the most exciting. If there's listeners who wanted to like get involved straight away with XToken, besides joining our community Discord, which you're more than welcome, and following our Twitter, we recently launched a pool. So this was a governance proposal for 900,000 OP tokens, so a pretty large one. We partnered with Gamma Strategies and UniV3 Staker to provide like a diverse experience for liquidity providers and different options from more passive to more active management, depending on people's risk appetite and how active they want to be and all that stuff. That passed, so that program is live. Let me check the current APR. It's been hovering around like 70%, which is, in my opinion, like pretty good for an OP weak pair. Yeah, that's 67%.
What's the link? What's the link people can go to? Is this in your app?
Yeah, you can go to xtokenterminal.io. I can give you a direct link.
Is it the Wrapped ETH OP?
Exactly. Yeah, so it's pretty nice APRs, 67%. The thing I like about this pool as a liquidity provider, I did put some of my own money in this pool, is that the rewards go until March 21, 2023. And they've been pretty stable so far. So I know like similar pools, there's a WETH OP pool on Velodrome that's paying like 20%. So this is quite a bit better returns at the moment. We're also trying to, because this is such a big program for us, we're also launched these an NFT collection that we're basically raffling off to people who have at least $200 liquidity in these pools. So every week we take a snapshot, and up to 50 wallets will get whitelisted for a mint. And last time we spoke, we actually showed you guys these NFTs, but basically we worked with an artist to make some like. I've always been a big fan of like the rare Pepes, trading card style NFTs, like some of the really OG throwbacks that were on Bitcoin. So we decided that we were going to do like optimism focused cards and memes. So there are some like direct optimism memes. We made some honoraries for different optimism team members, and it's just like a really fun kind of Pepe inspired collection of trading cards. So those are all free mint. There's only 365 of them. They're trading on Optimism, and we just had the snapshot for week 3. So there's still going to be 3 more weeks at least of potentially free NFTs.
Cool, super cool. Yeah, I like them. I thought they were cool, and they the dudes who won them from the first time we talked were pretty pumped about that. I had to do some thorough conversations with a couple people to get their money over to OP so that they could claim them, but totally worth it for them because they were a pretty big hit. So
yeah, there's not much activity yet on Optimism NFT scene, but if you're a believer in optimism, you have to imagine that changes.
Yeah, I mean it's got to with some of the projects that are moving over to OP and just the hype behind the chain in general, and all the things that are going on, and just all the opportunities on there, right? I was looking around for some places to stake some stables and being generally pretty conservative with what I have on chain, and I mean Reaper moving over to there. I think it's down to like 12% today, but still I was able to stake USDC for 18% at one point, and it's fluctuating.
Oh, that's some pretty good alpha.
Yeah,
I heard they were moving, but I haven't checked it out.
Oh yeah, so if you for anyone listening, if you hop over to Reaper.farm on OP, they've got yesterday. I have to check the APRs. I think they went down a little bit today, but like I said, they'll fluctuate. I mean, everything dropped with that CPI report, and then
those guys are from Phantom.
Yeah, it's the Byte Masons.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So Justin Bieber is the one of the I guess the primary founder of White Masons and Reaper, and they had 18% on USDC as of last night. It did go down a little bit, and then it was like 26% on USDT. So, and
Nice.
those are single stake pools. So, you don't have to worry about impermanent loss unless you're worried about one of those losing peg, which not, not overly concerned about USDC coming off peg. So,
Right.
yeah, a lot of opportunities. And then, I mean, you got the Velodrome bribes that are happening on Optimism. So just a ton of good opportunities. So I definitely imagine the NFT scene will move there rather quickly.
Yeah, the DeFi has been exciting. It's kind of funny looking across the L2s. Like Arbitrum's got a super rich NFT scene, not much in the way of DeFi, and Optimism's kind of the polar opposite at this point. Be really interesting to follow along these layer twos and the niche that they carve out for themselves.
Yeah, and the approach that they take when they launch onto them,
Mm-hmm.
and how they're trying to differentiate themselves from the others, which gets significantly more difficult as more and more pop up. But I mean, you see Arbitrum and Optimism and just the hype they have behind them, and now like the cult followings that they have. If you do it right, there's just tons of opportunity there.
Yep.
So, well,
And
I
by the
think
way, I
that,
should mention all of our apps are going to at least be on Ethereum, Arbitrum, Optimism, and Polygon. We may move mining to other places where Uni V3 exists. So right now, I think like CeeLo, we're exploring, but yeah, at least those 4 places, every XToken terminal app will exist.
perfect. That was my last question. It's just the apps that or the chains that people can look for you on. So, answered that first. I appreciate that. Um, but yeah, with that, I think that answers my questions. Anybody in the audience have any questions? If you do, um, you can post here in the AMA questions, and I'll unmute you if you have anything. I'll give you a minute to do that. Um, anything else you want to talk about last minute?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground, pretty much everything. Excellent job hosting and touching on pretty much all aspects of the project. So super excited for the origination launch and appreciate you having me on.